Okay, so I have a selection around this car. Now, a lot of times you can either accidentally lose your selection or later on you're going to need it again. You don't want to go back in and do it. So if you look right here under select, and if we go down here and go save selection, so I have a selection around this car, if you can see that. I'm going to go select, oops, save selection. I'm going to name it right here. So I'm going to name it car. Now if I lose that selection or later on I need it, I can go back up here to select, load selection, and drop it down.
Is it based around the car itself, or is it based around where like the selection is?
It just saves the selection.
Okay.
So if I move that car, then that selection doesn't work anymore. That's a good question. All right, so I'm gonna delete the surroundings around this car. All right, so see how we have, sometimes what I'll do is I'll come up here like that little thing, or there'll be just a little bit of fringe left on my selection. I mean, there's a bunch of reasons I might do this. So I'm going to go back here and reselect my car. I'm going to go right here to select, modify. So I have some options here. Let's zoom in here. Oops. Let's zoom in here. So here's my selection. I'm going to go to select, modify. I'm going to go to contract. And right here it's asking me how many pixels I want to contract by. So watch the selection. See how it moved inside? Now sometimes I do that when I have just a little bit of fringe around the edge I want to get rid of. I'll just knock it in like 2 or 3 pixels, and then I'll invert the selection and knock it out. That's way too much, obviously. Now the other thing here, under select, we can also go, that was contract, we could go to expand, and let's expand by 20 again, just so you can see it. And it pushes it out. Or I can come in here and go select, modify, feather, and I'm going to do it extreme, so let's leave it at 32. Same thing, and then I'm going to invert it again. And then if you notice, when I do it, it softened up that edge. So what it did is it goes, how many pixels in do you want to feather? So if you need to soften the whole thing uniformly, that's a good way to do it. These other ones we'll get to later. Feather, contract, border, all that. Now, one other thing, while I have this selection here. So now we have this selection. So sometimes if you have like lettering, I'm going to invert this one more time. If you have lettering or something like that, you might want to do an offset line around it, that kind of thing. So I could use this same, let's do it this way. Let's put some type in here. All right, here's some type. Now I'm going to go, if I click, the command click the actual little image, then I get a selection, okay? So I'm going to do my select, modify, and then I'm going to go expand. And let's go 25 and see what it looks like. Okay, so that's good enough for this. Now I'm going to go up here to edit. Why is it not giving me that? I have to be on its own layer. Edit, stroke, and I'm going to do 3 pixels and just hit OK, and then it strokes that selection. So that's kind of one way you could use it. I do it a lot for like little type tricks and stuff like that. Simple. So let's go. I'm going to make a little bit of type here. Now you guys, if I double click here on this type icon, it'll select it for me because I'm going to change this. Okay, so we're going to go through some real simple layer style tools. So all you got to remember is it's under layer, okay? Because that's where layer styles lives. And we're going to go to layer style right here. Okay, and there's some options here. I'm just going to go over some of the simple ones, and we'll go over other ones a little bit later. So this one's, and you got to be careful with this stuff too, you guys. It can get cheesy real fast, okay? But when you use them right, they're great, okay? So I'm going to bevel and emboss. Actually, I'm going to do this real quick. Okay, so sometimes Photoshop doesn't like to do certain things if it's active type. Okay, does that make sense? If it's live type, sometimes Photoshop either won't do it or it just doesn't really work very well on it. Usually it just won't do it. Not everything, just certain things. Okay, and you'll find out when things aren't working if it's type, that if I go right here under layer again, okay, and I go to rasterize type, this is now, if you look at it, it's now not a type icon. So that means I can't edit the type anymore. So if I want to do that, I usually will duplicate the layer or whatever, or I got to make sure, it's not that hard to make type, so it's not that big a deal anyway. All right, so let's look at this, and we're going to go layer, layer style. We're going to go bevel and emboss. And I'm trying to get a good, there we go. Okay, see how it's starting to get, it's hard to see it up there, but it's starting to give it like a bevel. It's just hard to see up there. You can probably see it on your side a little better. Basically what you're doing with these, with the layer styles, is you're coming over here and you have a set of tools. They're usually slider bars, and you slide them and you try different things, okay? That's what I like about when we're talking about effects, is you can kind of jump in and start playing with them right away, okay? So this one, it's got these different types of bevels, pillow emboss, outer bevel, and it just does, and then I can adjust the level of that bevel on it, okay? Does that make sense? It's because today I'm just going to have you start playing with them. You really just need to start playing with them. This right here is the contour of the bevel, so if I pop that, this is the profile of the contour. You can play with that too. So let's cancel that. Another one up here is, these are the typical ones. Layer style, drop shadow. And you can adjust the angle of the light here. Hang on, I'm on the wrong layer. Layer style, drop shadow. There it goes. Okay, so there's the opacity. Okay, so it's got an opacity thing. Again, if you're noticing a lot of your tools, your brush tool, this tool, a lot of them have an opacity setting, so you can up it or down it, okay? This has also got an overlay setting, okay? One thing you've got to realize, and I forgot to mention this last week, is you also, when you go to Photoshop, when you go up here to your control bar, when it's giving you your control tools, if you ever notice, in a lot of your sets, like your brush set, it'll have an overlay setting just like your layers, okay? Photoshop has a tendency, and I don't know why, to all of a sudden throw that to an overlay without you telling it to, and you'll be sitting there painting or trying to draw or something on it, and it won't work. That's one of the first places I check, okay, to make sure it's back on normal, okay? So the same thing, this has a contour. It has a spread, which is just how hard or soft edge that cast shadow is. It has a size here, and then I can come here and adjust where the light's coming from. So if it's coming from upper left, it's going to be there, okay? These are all under layer style, okay? Let's do this real quick. So let's go, I'm going to put a dark value in this. And let's go, let's pick a yellow here. Maybe here. And we're going to go to outer glow. And that's exactly what it does, okay? So you can, again, you can adjust the opacity. Noise is just going to do that. It's going to distort it out, okay? Or pixelate it, basically. This is the spread of it, and if you see it gets harder edge, as you go in it gets softer, okay? And this is the size of it. Okay, so you could dial it in where it's basically an outline if you want, okay? And again, it has all this down here. Let's go to... You can do stroke. That's way too much. It's not picking it up because it's too light. That's where it's disappearing. There it goes. Okay, so you can't see it, but the way it's eating in, it's giving it an outer stroke, and I'm just going bigger or smaller. So if I go too big with it, let's see if I can do it here. There you go. So you can just give it an outline, your type, okay? And again, opacity and same controls. And you can apply multiple things to the same image. So now let's jump over here. And you remember our edit tools, the transform tools, right? The one we haven't talked about is this one right here. And this is going to give you this grid, and then I can take that and I can bend whatever it is I have. I can pull these inner parts and I can recontour whatever it is. That looks like a Black Sabbath logo. Right? You know what I'm talking about? I'll have to pull it up. Anyway, you can do that with whatever you want. You can do it with an image, whatever it is, okay? Does that all make sense? Okay, that's all. Everything, layer styles are all living under layer, and then the other one is just another tool in our now, there's another one here, and I'll show you a real quick, simple thing. So this is my toy boat that I cut out. I'm going to do the same thing we did with the camera, where I'm going to make a duplicate layer, put it underneath, go back to transform, flip vertical, back to transform, skew, I'm going to pull this up, and then just the same thing, I'm going to do a layer mask, like we did with our camera. Black and white. Now this time I'm going to try and find an overlay that marries it to the bottom a little better. Like that, okay? So now we're going to come in here under Filter and we're going to go to Liquify. And what this is going to do is I can manipulate, I'm going to use this smudge one first, okay? And I'm just going to manipulate this, and I'm going to start getting a little bit of a reflection kind of thing going, or a ripple. I'm going to up the pressure a little bit. Now you see when I up the pressure it gets more intense. It's just like your threshold on some of your other tools. Let's just do that for now. And I'm going to hit OK. Okay, and I can start to manipulate that. The other thing you can do with this, and I'll just use this as the example. It has these tools in here, right here, that do, okay, so that was our smudge tool, right? But it also has, and I'm going to just go a couple of simple ones here. It has a pucker tool, which is going to do, let's knock down our brush size, which is going to shrink things. And it also has a bloat tool that's going to expand things. It also, let's see, this is a face tool where you can kind of manipulate things. And then let's go back to normal here. Hang on. Those are kind of the simple ones. I'll go over some of the more complex ones later when we need them. Let's go Liquify. And then it has some tools over here. If you notice on the right, it has these it's reading the face. So it has this, see, I can make it the eye a little bigger. This is the right eye. Eye height. Eye width. Oops. Makes it a little wider. Tilt of the eye. Nose height. Okay, so it's reading when you give it something like this where it's a let's give him more of a smile. Okay, so like that smile thing, those things could be subtle little things that you actually could use if you were fixing up a bio picture or something like that. But you'd have to be really subtle with it. Okay, but it's reading this information. If I gave this filter like a picture with 20 people in it, a background, all that stuff, it's probably not going to read it very well. And it might. I don't know. I've never used it on that. And there's just a lot of tools here. It's designed for obviously just the face. Okay. Forehead, bigger, smaller. Okay, does that make sense? You could correct a little bit of lens distortion for a portrait if you wanted to, like that. But again, it'd be really subtle. It wouldn't be this like hitting you over the head like I'm doing. So let's pull up some type. Let's play around with that. I wanted you, oh, and one more thing. This, again, under filter. So that's where Liquify lives. And then also, this is just a real common one. Our blur tool is here. So one of the most common ones is Gaussian blur. And it's, again, it's just, I'm just pulling over however far I want that to blur, okay? And it also has, I want you to play with these two. It has, let's try motion blur. So this one, I can manipulate which direction that's coming from, how intense it is. Now what I might do if I was going to do something like, we just did this actually, if I'm doing a car, I might put the car on the top layer if it's cut out, put another copy of it here, blur the one behind it, and erase a little bit of the back of the other one. It'll look like a car in motion. So there's different ways we got to start using these things together. So let's go through it and start playing around with them.